They were broke 6 months before ChatGPT changed everything, and this is the most insane comeback story in tech history. OpenAI was literally on the verge of bankruptcy, burning through millions of dollars with no clear path to success, and then they released one product that generated $80 billion in value almost overnight. But here's the crazy part. They almost never made it to that moment. This is the complete story of how OpenAI went from the brink of financial collapse to becoming the most valuable AI company in the world. It all started in 2015 when a group of tech billionaires including Elon Musk and Sam Altman decided that artificial intelligence was becoming too dangerous to leave in the hands of big tech companies like Google and Facebook. They were terrified that these massive corporations would develop superintelligent AI first and use it to control the world. So they created OpenAI as a non-profit organization with one mission: develop artificial general intelligence that benefits all of humanity, not just the wealthy elite. They raised over $1 billion in initial funding and promised to share all their AI research openly with the world. The early years were promising but expensive. OpenAI was hiring the smartest AI researchers on the planet, paying them millions of dollars in salaries, and building massive computing infrastructure to train their AI models. They made some impressive breakthroughs, creating AI systems that could play video games better than humans and generate somewhat realistic text, but none of it was making money. By 2018, they had burned through hundreds of millions of dollars and were facing a serious problem. The nonprofit structure meant they couldn't sell equity to investors or generate profits like a normal company. They were completely dependent on donations from wealthy benefactors, and those donations weren't coming fast enough to keep up with their massive expenses. The situation got so bad that Elon Musk, one of the co-founders, started publicly criticizing the company's direction and eventually left the board entirely. He felt that OpenAI had strayed too far from its original mission and was becoming just another tech startup chasing profits instead of focusing on safety. This was a huge blow to the company's credibility and funding prospects. In 2019, OpenAI made a controversial decision that probably saved the company, but also betrayed its founding principles. They created a for-profit subsidiary called OpenAI LP that could raise money from traditional investors and generate returns. Microsoft immediately invested $1 billion in exchange for exclusive licensing rights to OpenAI's technology. This partnership was crucial for survival, but it also meant that OpenAI's research was no longer truly open to everyone. Critics accused them of selling out to big tech, the exact thing they were originally created to prevent. But the financial pressure was too intense to ignore. Even with Microsoft's investment, OpenAI was still burning through money faster than they could raise it. Training large AI models requires enormous amounts of computing power, which costs millions of dollars per experiment. They were running thousands of experiments, most of which failed completely. By 2021, the company was spending over $100 million per year just on computing costs alone. The pressure was immense. Sam Altman, who had become CEO, was constantly fundraising and trying to convince investors that OpenAI was on the verge of a breakthrough. But many investors were skeptical. The AI field was littered with companies that had promised revolutionary technology and delivered nothing but expensive research projects. OpenAI had been around for 6 years and hadn't produced a single commercial product that generated significant revenue. They had released GPT-1 and GPT-2, which were impressive from a technical standpoint, but no one knew how to make money from them. The text generation was interesting, but not accurate enough for most practical applications. The models would often produce nonsensical responses or offensive content that made them unsuitable for commercial use. By early 2022, the situation was becoming desperate. OpenAI was spending nearly $200 million per year and generating almost no revenue. They had raised additional funding, but investors were starting to demand concrete results. The company needed to prove that their technology could actually solve real-world problems and generate substantial profits. This is when they made the decision that would change everything. Instead of continuing to focus purely on research, they decided to create a consumer product that ordinary people could actually use. The idea was simple but risky. Take their latest language model GPT 3.5 and turn it into a conversational chatbot that anyone could interact with through a simple web interface. Most people inside the company thought it was a waste of time. The previous versions of their chatbots had been clunky and unreliable. But Sam Altman and his team believed that GPT 3.5 was finally good enough to create something magical. They spent months fine-tuning the model, training it to be more helpful, harmless, and honest in its responses. They called it ChatGPT and launched it on November 30th, 2022. What happened next was unprecedented in tech history. ChatGPT gained 1 million users in just 5 days, faster than any consumer application had ever grown. People were amazed by its ability to write essays, solve math problems, write code, and have seemingly intelligent conversations about any topic. Within 2 months, it had 100 million monthly active users, making it the fastest-growing consumer application in history. The timing was perfect. People were stuck at home due to the pandemic, students needed help with homework, professionals wanted assistance with writing tasks, and everyone was curious about artificial intelligence. ChatGPT wasn't just a cool tech demo, it was actually useful for millions of everyday tasks. Suddenly, everyone wanted access to OpenAI's technology. Companies started paying millions of dollars to integrate GPT models into their products. Microsoft expanded their partnership and invested another $10 billion. The company that was broke 6 months earlier was now valued at $80 billion. Sam Altman went from desperately seeking investors to turning away billions in funding offers. The transformation was so dramatic that it seemed almost impossible to believe. But the real genius wasn't just the technology, it was the timing and execution. OpenAI had spent years building the foundation, training increasingly powerful models and learning from their failures. When they finally released ChatGPT, they weren't just launching a product, they were unleashing years of accumulated knowledge and research. The lesson here is incredible. Sometimes the difference between failure and massive success is just one breakthrough moment, one decision to pivot from research to practical application. OpenAI went from burning cash with no clear business model to creating one of the most valuable companies in the world, all because they finally built something that ordinary people actually wanted to use.